I arrived early and took my seat quietly, just like I planned. I didn't want attention. I wanted my son to have his moment without me standing out. The estate was beautiful, filled with flowers, soft music, and guests dressed in expensive clothes. I wore something simple, something comfortable. That was always my way. I smiled at people who nodded at me and kept my hands folded in my lap. As the ceremony began, I watched my son walk forward. My chest felt tight with emotion. I remembered him as a little boy, holding my hand, trusting me with everything. Seeing him there made all the long years feel worth it. I told myself this day wasn't about me. It was about him starting a new life. When Samantha appeared, everyone turned. She looked perfect, confident, glowing. She moved like she belonged at the center of attention. I stood and clapped with everyone else, trying to be welcoming. I wanted peace. I wanted respect. I believed kindness would be enough. During the ceremony, everything seemed fine at first. Then, in a moment that felt small but sharp, she leaned toward a group near the front. Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. The words carried just enough. She laughed lightly and said something about how simple tastes must run in the family, glancing in my direction. A few people chuckled awkwardly. One person looked at me, then away. My face felt warm. I didn't move. I didn't respond. Inside, something cracked. It wasn't anger right away. It was disbelief. I wondered if I heard her right. I wondered how someone could be so careless on a day meant for love and unity. I kept my posture steady. I refused to give her the reaction she seemed to want. I reminded myself where I was and why. This was my son's wedding. I would not ruin it. I breathed slowly and focused on him instead. As the vows continued, my thoughts drifted. I thought about how people often judge what they can see. They measure worth by clothes, by speech, by how loudly someone lives. I had learned long ago that quiet didn't mean weak. Still, the sting was real. Being dismissed in front of strangers cut deeper than I expected. When the ceremony ended, applause filled the air. I stood again and clapped. My smile stayed in place, even though it felt heavy. A few guests avoided my eyes. Others looked curious. No one said anything. That silence said enough. I told myself this was only the beginning of the day, and I would get through it with dignity. Whatever she thought of me, whatever she believed, I would not let it shake me. I had survived harder moments than this. I straightened my shoulders and followed the crowd, carrying my hurt quietly, and choosing, for now, to say nothing at all. As I walked through the reception hall, memories followed me more loudly than the music. I looked at my son laughing with his friends, and my heart felt heavy. I remembered the nights I stayed awake worrying about bills, the long years I worked without complaint. Brandon and his sister, Maya, never lacked what they needed. I made sure of that. Their education, their safety, their dreams always came first. I paid for Brandon's college without asking for thanks. I helped Maya start her small business when no one else believed in her. I never told them how much I had or how careful I was with money. I wanted them to grow up grounded, not entitled. I thought raising them that way was the right thing to do. Standing there, I realized something painful. Samantha didn't see those years. She didn't see a mother who gave everything quietly. She saw someone she thought was beneath her. To her, value only existed when it was visible. If it wasn't loud, expensive, or impressive, it didn't matter. That truth hurt more than her words. It wasn't just disrespect. It was dismissal. She had judged me without knowing anything about me, and worse, she felt comfortable doing it because she thought I had no power. Anger settled in slowly, not like fire, but like weight. I felt heartbreak too, because my son had chosen someone who could look down on his own mother without shame. I asked myself where I went wrong, then reminded myself that I had raised him with love. The choices he made as an adult were his own. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to confront her publicly. That wasn't my way. What I wanted was understanding. I wanted her to learn that kindness matters, and that judging people can cost you more than you expect. As I watched Samantha move through the room, confident and careless, my thoughts sharpened. I didn't need to expose everything at once. I didn't need to humiliate her. I only needed to let truth do its work, slowly and clearly. I knew patience could be stronger than anger. I had learned that from life. From loss. From surviving quietly while others underestimated me. If Samantha believed I was powerless, that belief would be her mistake, not mine. I decided then that I would stay calm and observant. I would listen more than I spoke. I would let her reveal herself through her actions. People often do when they think no one important is watching. My heart still ached, but something else grew beside it. Resolve. I reminded myself that dignity is not loud. Strength does not need approval. I didn't need to prove who I was to anyone, but I would no longer allow myself to be treated as if I didn't matter. That day changed something inside me. I smiled when spoken to, nodded politely, and kept my thoughts to myself. But behind that calm surface, my mind was clear. I would protect my self-respect. And when the time was right, Samantha would understand that she had misjudged me completely. I stayed near the edge of the room and watched. It wasn't hard. When people think you don't matter, they stop guarding their behavior. Samantha moved from group to group like she owned the place. Her smile changed depending on who she was talking to. With some guests, she was sweet and warm. With others, her tone dropped, sharp and careless. I noticed how she spoke to the staff. Short sentences. No thank you. A small wave of her hand as if they were invisible. I saw how she corrected Brandon in front of others, laughing it off as a joke when he looked uncomfortable. He didn't seem to notice the pattern. He smiled, nodded, and stayed close to her side, proud and trusting. When someone asked about family, Samantha answered for Brandon, cutting him off. She spoke about plans, expectations, and appearances, always placing herself at the center. Brandon listened like this was normal. Like this was love. My chest tightened, but I said nothing. I realized then that this wasn't a single careless comment. This was who she was when she felt secure. Confident that no one would challenge her. Confident that she had already won. I didn't follow her around or stare. I stayed still and let the moments come to me. I heard her complain quietly about seating. I saw her roll her eyes when an older guest spoke too long. Each small moment added to a larger picture. Part of me wanted to step in. To pull Brandon aside and warn him. To remind him who he was before he started shrinking himself to keep someone else comfortable. But another part of me held back. He needed to see it himself. If I pushed too hard, he would only defend her. I thought about what it means to be a mother. Loving your child without losing yourself. Supporting them without accepting disrespect. I had done enough sacrificing in my life to know the difference. I decided I would not confront her directly. Not yet. Instead, I would pay attention. I would remember what I saw and what I heard. People like Samantha leave traces of themselves everywhere. You just have to be patient enough to notice. I spoke when spoken to and listened when others talked. I watched how guests reacted to her. Some smiled politely. Others exchanged looks. I wasn't the only one seeing it. That gave me clarity. By the end of the evening, I felt calmer. Not because the situation had improved, but because I understood it. I no longer doubted my instincts. I didn't feel small anymore. I felt aware. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for sure. I would not rush. I would not explode. I would move carefully, with control and purpose. If Samantha believed she could treat people however she wanted without consequence, she was wrong. And when the moment came, the truth would speak for itself, without me ever raising my voice. After the wedding, life moved forward on the surface, but my thoughts stayed sharp. I returned to my quiet routines, the ones no one ever questioned. Phone calls. Meetings. Documents reviewed late at night. None of it was new to me. What changed was my focus. I began to make small moves that looked ordinary to anyone watching. I adjusted investments that had been sitting untouched for years. I redirected funding from projects that no longer aligned with my values. I made anonymous contributions where they mattered most. No names. No recognition. Just quiet influence. None of this pointed back to me. That was important. I didn't want attention. I wanted control. Samantha, on the other hand, grew more comfortable. She spoke more freely around me, assuming I was exactly who she believed I was. Someone polite. Someone harmless. Someone easy to ignore. She talked about plans that weren't hers to make, about benefits she assumed would appear. I listened and said little. I noticed how quickly she expected doors to open. How irritated she became when they didn't. She never suspected that some of those doors had been gently closed by hands she underestimated. When Brandon mentioned opportunities that suddenly fell through or changed direction, I kept my expression neutral. I offered calm words, nothing more. I didn't want him confused or defensive. This wasn't about punishing him. It was about balance. Each step I took was careful. I checked details twice. I made sure nothing looked personal. Everything had a reasonable explanation. That was the point. I wasn't attacking. I was guiding events back to fairness. There was a strange calm in working this way. No raised voices. No arguments. Just patience and timing. I had learned long ago that power works best when it doesn't announce itself. Samantha began to show frustration in small ways. Sharp comments. Tight smiles. She blamed bad luck, bad timing, other people. She never looked in my direction. That confirmed what I already knew. She didn't think I mattered. I kept my distance but stayed present. Family dinners. Short conversations. Polite exchanges. I was careful not to change too much. Consistency makes people comfortable. Comfortable people make mistakes. At night, I reflected on my choices. I wasn't acting out of spite. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was protecting myself and correcting a quiet imbalance that had gone too far. Respect should never be optional. The tension grew slowly, like pressure beneath the surface. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. Just enough to remind me that the path I chose was working. I understood then that revenge didn't have to be loud to be effective. It could be calm. It could be clean. And it could remain invisible until the truth had no choice but to show itself. Things began to shift in quiet, almost unnoticeable ways. Plans Samantha spoke about with confidence started to change at the last minute. Invitations she expected didn't arrive. Approvals she assumed were guaranteed were suddenly delayed or politely declined. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that could be blamed on a single person. She tried to laugh it off at first. I could see it in the tight way she smiled, the way her eyes searched the room when something didn't go as planned. She asked questions, but the answers were always reasonable. Policies changed. Priorities shifted. Circumstances evolved. There was never a clear reason to argue. I stayed the same. Calm. Polite. Uninvolved. Samantha's frustration grew. Small moments began to embarrass her. A reservation mix-up. A project passed to someone else. A suggestion ignored in a meeting where she expected praise. Each time, she looked unsettled, as if the ground beneath her was less solid than she believed. She complained more at home. I didn't hear everything, but enough reached me. Her tone sharpened. Her patience thinned. She blamed others quickly, never herself. That pattern became harder to hide. Brandon noticed the change. He asked gentle questions, trying to understand why she was always upset. She brushed him off, saying people were jealous or uncooperative. He wanted to believe her, but I could see doubt starting to form. I felt a quiet satisfaction, not because she was struggling, but because the truth was surfacing on its own. I didn't need to speak. I didn't need to defend myself. Her behavior was doing that for me. I reminded myself to stay careful. This was not about humiliation. It was about clarity. I didn't want chaos or pain. I wanted awareness. I wanted respect to return to its proper place. Samantha grew more defensive. She watched people closely now, measuring reactions, trying to find the source of her discomfort. She never once looked at me. That told me everything. She still believed I had no influence. Brandon came to me one evening, tired and confused. He asked if I thought marriage was supposed to feel this heavy so soon. I chose my words carefully. I told him that love should bring peace more often than tension. I didn't mention Samantha by name. I didn't accuse. I let the thought sit with him. After he left, I felt a deep sense of calm. I had waited. I had acted with restraint. I had protected my dignity without hurting my son. What I was doing wasn't loud or cruel. It was measured. It was fair. And most of all, it was effective. Samantha was learning a lesson without ever realizing who was teaching it, and that was the kind of victory that didn't need applause. The rehearsal dinner was meant to be calm. Just family, close friends, and a chance to relax before another long day of events. I sat near the end of the table, listening more than speaking, the way I always did. The conversation moved easily at first. Food was served. Glasses clinked. Laughter came and went. Then Samantha spoke. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She smiled and tilted her head, the way people do when they think they're being clever. She made a comment about traditions being a little outdated, then added that some people hold on to old habits because they never had much to begin with. Her eyes flicked toward me for just a second. A few people went quiet. Someone cleared their throat. Brandon laughed nervously, unsure if it was a joke. I felt the room shift. This time, there was no doubt. It was meant for me. Something settled in my chest. Not anger. Not shock. Clarity. I realized then that silence had done all it could. Patience had shown me who she was, but patience alone would not stop her. If I stayed quiet now, I would be teaching her that this behavior was acceptable. I would also be teaching my son that his mother deserved it. I kept my face calm. I didn't respond. I didn't leave. I finished my meal and thanked the host before standing up. My hands were steady. Inside, I had already made my decision. That night, I didn't sleep much. I thought about Brandon. About how fragile happiness can be when pride and control sit underneath it. I didn't want to destroy his future. I didn't want to humiliate anyone publicly. But I also refused to be reduced again. The next morning, I began preparing carefully. I chose what to reveal and what to keep private. Just enough truth to draw a clear line. Just enough to change how I was seen, without turning the focus away from my son. I made quiet calls. I arranged documents. I spoke to one trusted person who could confirm facts without adding drama. No announcements. No speeches. Everything measured. When I saw Samantha later that day, she looked confident, almost relaxed. She had no idea what was coming. She still believed I was someone she could dismiss without consequence. I didn't feel nervous. I felt grounded. For the first time since the wedding events began, I felt fully in control. This wasn't about showing off. It wasn't about proving I was better than her. It was about reclaiming space. About reminding everyone, including myself, that dignity has weight. I knew the moment I chose was approaching. And when it arrived, I would speak calmly, clearly, and only once. Because sometimes power doesn't come from how much you reveal, but from knowing exactly when to stop hiding. The reception was lively, full of music and movement, but I waited for a quieter moment. I didn't want attention. I wanted understanding. Near the side of the hall, a small group of guests gathered, people who mattered in different ways. I joined them naturally, as if nothing special was happening. One of the planners approached me to confirm a detail. She spoke respectfully, carefully. I nodded and thanked her. A guest nearby noticed. Another planner followed, asking my approval about a change. Again, I answered calmly. No raised voice. No show. Later, a gift was delivered quietly to the couple, something meaningful and generous, but without my name announced. A few people knew where it came from. They didn't say much, but looks were exchanged. The mood shifted slightly, like a curtain moving. Samantha noticed. Her smile faltered just for a moment. She watched the interactions more closely now. I could see the questions forming behind her eyes. She approached one guest, then another, trying to piece things together. Her confidence thinned. I didn't confront her. I didn't explain myself. I simply remained present, steady, and polite. When she finally came near me, her tone was different. Careful. Uncertain. She spoke slowly, choosing her words. I answered kindly, without warmth or coldness. Just calm. That was enough. The realization landed on her face without a single word being spoken. She had misjudged me completely. The embarrassment was quiet but deep. She looked away quickly, as if hoping no one else had noticed. But people had. Brandon stood nearby, watching the exchange. I saw confusion cross his face, then something closer to understanding. He noticed how her posture changed, how her voice softened when speaking to me. He noticed that she no longer dismissed me. Later, he pulled me aside. He didn't ask about money. He asked why people were treating me differently. I told him the truth in simple terms. That I had always lived quietly. That I believed actions mattered more than appearances. I said nothing about Samantha. I didn't need to. He hugged me longer than usual. I felt him thinking. The rest of the evening passed smoothly. Samantha stayed close to Brandon, quieter than before. She smiled less. She watched more. I stayed exactly the same as I had been all along. I felt no thrill, no urge to push further. What I felt was peace. I hadn't embarrassed her publicly. I hadn't raised my voice. I had simply allowed reality to surface. That was enough. The message had been delivered without cruelty, without damage, and without regret. And for the first time since the wedding began, I knew I had regained something important, my place, my respect, and my calm. After the reception, I didn't need to do much. All I did was create space and let people see what I had already seen. I invited a few family members and close friends to small gatherings over the next days. Nothing formal. Just meals, conversations, moments where people spoke freely. Samantha joined these gatherings with the same confidence she always carried. At first, she tried to impress. She talked about plans, expectations, and what she believed she deserved. She assumed agreement. She assumed admiration. I listened. More than once, she spoke carelessly, thinking no one important was paying attention. She complained about not being included in certain decisions. She hinted that some people owed her more support. She spoke about Brandon's future as if it were already hers to control. Someone overheard her pushing Brandon to distance himself from certain relatives she considered unhelpful. Another person heard her joke about how patience was only necessary until you got what you wanted. Each comment landed quietly, but they stayed with the people who heard them. When questions came to me, I didn't add fuel. I didn't explain or accuse. I simply said that everyone shows who they are over time. That was enough. Samantha began to notice the shift. Conversation stopped when she entered a room. Invitations felt colder. Compliments disappeared. She laughed it off, saying people were being sensitive. But her voice lacked confidence now. Brandon noticed more too. He started asking direct questions. He asked why certain relatives felt uncomfortable around her. He asked why plans were always about control instead of compromise. At first, she brushed him off. Then she grew defensive. One evening, the tension broke. Voices rose behind a closed door. I didn't listen closely, but I didn't need to. The truth had already done its work. Brandon came out later with a tired face and heavy steps. He sat with me quietly. He said he hadn't wanted to see it before. He admitted he had ignored small signs because he wanted peace. I told him that love doesn't require blindness. It requires honesty. Samantha tried to recover. She apologized to a few people, but the words felt practiced. When she realized the respect she expected wasn't returning, frustration slipped through again. That only confirmed what others already felt. No one yelled. No one accused her publicly. There was no dramatic scene. Just distance. Just clarity. I felt a deep sense of balance return. Not because she was exposed, but because the truth no longer rested only on my shoulders. Others saw it now too. Justice didn't come as punishment. It came as understanding. And understanding, once shared, could not be taken back. In the days that followed, the atmosphere around me changed in a quiet but steady way. People spoke to me with warmth and sincerity. They listened when I talked. They sought my opinion without hesitation. Nothing was said directly, yet everything felt different. I hadn't asked for respect, but it had returned on its own. Samantha felt the change too. Where she once moved easily through rooms, she now hesitated. Conversations around her stayed polite but distant. The confidence she carried before was replaced by caution. She was no longer the center she believed herself to be. I didn't feel proud of her discomfort. What I felt was relief. Relief that I no longer had to carry the weight of being misunderstood. Relief that dignity had found its way back without noise or force. Brandon came to me one afternoon and asked to talk. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't confused. He was thoughtful. He told me he had been thinking about his childhood, about the stability he always had and how little he questioned where it came from. He said he now understood how much I had given without ever making it visible. I listened and let him speak. When he finished, he apologized. Not in a dramatic way, but sincerely. He said he should have paid closer attention. He said he should have protected me better. I told him I never needed protection, only respect. He nodded, understanding that difference. For the first time in a long while, I felt maternal pride without pain attached to it. I saw my son growing, learning, and opening his eyes. That mattered more to me than any moment of victory. Samantha tried to adjust her behavior. She spoke more carefully and smiled more often, but something had shifted permanently. People respond to truth differently once they see it. The space she once filled so easily was no longer hers. I remained steady. I didn't change how I spoke or acted. I didn't bring up the past. I moved forward with the same quiet confidence that had always carried me. There was strength in knowing I had faced disrespect without losing myself. I hadn't matched cruelty with cruelty. I had stayed composed and allowed reality to speak. At night, when I reflected on everything, I didn't feel bitterness. I felt calm. I had chosen restraint when it mattered. I had chosen clarity over chaos. Respect, I learned, doesn't always come from demanding it. Sometimes it comes from standing firm long enough for others to see who you truly are. And when that happens, the victory feels complete, not because someone else lost, but because you never did. With time, everything grew quieter. The tension faded, replaced by space to think and breathe. I found myself looking back, not with anger, but with understanding. The journey had tested me in ways I didn't expect. It reminded me how easily patience can be mistaken for weakness, and how quickly people judge what they don't understand. I thought about the moments I stayed silent, the times I chose restraint instead of reaction. Those choices weren't easy. They required trust in myself and in the truth. I learned that self-respect doesn't come from proving others wrong, but from refusing to lower yourself to meet their behavior. What mattered most to me was not whether Samantha felt embarrassed or corrected. What mattered was that I stayed whole. I didn't lose my values. I didn't trade dignity for satisfaction. The truth revealed itself without me forcing it, and that was enough. Brandon and I talked again, more openly this time. He told me he was sorry for overlooking me, for assuming I would always be fine no matter how I was treated. I listened carefully. I forgave him because I could see he meant it. But forgiveness didn't erase the lesson. It strengthened it. I told him that love should never require silence in the face of disrespect. That honoring someone means seeing them fully, not only when it's convenient. He understood. I could tell by the way he listened, not just with his ears, but with his heart. My life returned to its quiet rhythm. I didn't feel the need to explain myself to anyone. I didn't feel the need to reveal more than I already had. What I carried, both in experience and in resources, remained private. That privacy was my choice, and it felt powerful. I realized then that freedom isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It settles in gently when you know you have nothing left to prove. I had been betrayed, underestimated, and dismissed. But I had also been patient, thoughtful, and strong. I faced each moment without losing my sense of self. In the end, my victory wasn't about wealth or control. It was about standing firm when it mattered, choosing wisdom over impulse, and allowing truth to do its work. I moved forward with peace, knowing that respect had been restored not because I demanded it, but because I never gave up on myself.